Hello, you're watching Ellie from Ellymentry Papercrafting. I'm an independent Stampin' Up demonstrator here in the UK. I started today playing around. I switched the camera on and just went with what I had in front of me. And I started off my exercise by using this sale-a-bration product called Wonderful World. Now, when I first got it, I stamped it a little bit, but I couldn't get my head around how it was going to work because the flowers and stems are all together. So I tried stamping just the top in a colour and the bottom in a green, and it kind of worked, but sometimes I didn't get the stem and the flower really well aligned kind of thing. So I got out my Stampin' Right markers. Now, don't confuse these with the blends. Our blends are alcohol markers, and you can't use those directly onto the stamp because it's a kind of permanent colour, so don't use them on your stamps. But this is the same ink that is contained within our ink pads, so you can use these on your stamp to colour different parts in different colours. It works really, really well. It gives you other possibilities to use with your stamping. So that was my demonstration to show several ways of using this stamp set, but it turned into how to use all your stamp sets and all your die sets together. And in doing so, I've made 2 cards and a tag, and I used the designer tags dies, the scalloped contours dies, the beautiful shapes, and the fabulous frames. And I took greetings or sentiments from Cottage Rose and Splendid Thoughts. So this is a fantastic example of how all our products work together. Several different things from several different sets. You put them together and they work absolutely beautifully. So enough of my chattering. Let me get on and show you my time-lapse video. So I'm just looking at the stamp set. This is sale-a-bration, which means it's free. If you purchase products from our catalogues, you can earn this free if you spend £90. So I've taken the Balmy Blue Stampin' Right marker, and I'm careful to use the brush end. And I use it on a sideways kind of angle, and this prevents the tip from getting damaged. So I just make sure that I colour all the flower area with the Balmy Blue, going right to the ends and making sure I don't go onto the stem at all. However, as I'm going to use green for the stem, it wouldn't matter too much because obviously blue is part of green. So I go over all the way, as I say, being quite careful with this. And when I'm happy that it's all covered, I will take my next colour, which is going to be green. And this does take a little bit of covering. I'm making sure that I really cover it all. So then I've taken Granny Apple Green. And again, I'm using the brush end. And I go in sort of downward movements because there is a little bit of texture in this stem. So I'm kind of like going over the texture in the same direction. Be quite careful when I get to the top of the flower and integrate the 2 colours together. Then I take the Old Olive, and this is a slightly darker colour than the Granny Apple. And what I like to do is put 2 shades of green when I'm doing stems and leaves. And I'm going along the very outside just to sort of outline it. And then I might sort of just go at the top where it meets the flower. I'll probably put a bit of the darker green in. And I'm just really touching it here and there so that the two colours kind of blend a little bit. Now I'm going to, because that starts to dry off, you need to reactivate it. And I've got some water in a spray, a very fine spray, and I've just mist it into the air, and I let the water droplets fall onto the stamp. And I did two very, very light mistings with it, just really light into the air, not directly onto the stamp. And then when you let it meet the cardstock, the colour transfers, and you get, because I did two very light mistings, it's a very slight watercolour effect, which I really like with this flower. So it's not a crisp stamp like you get with the stamp pad. So then I'm taking the scalloped dies, and I'm trying to find one that will frame this perfectly. And I start with the third size, but I realise that's not going to fit. So I go one up, just try that out. And I decide that, yeah, that's going to be the right size. So I do my usual trick, which is to take some post-it note paper and just secure the frame with that. And then once I've decided exactly how it's going to go, I pop that into my die cut machine. Now I'm trying out some cardstock to go underneath, and I realised I didn't have any balmy blue, but Pool Party is quite a really good match. So I've taken the next size up from the same set, the Scalloped Contours dies, and decided that I'm going to cut another map from this to go behind it. So again, I just stick that down with my post-it note. I'm thinking all this as I'm going along. None of this was prearranged. It just all started to happen in my head. Yep, so I'm liking that. So I'm sticking that down just with my Tombow multi-purpose glue and making sure I go around that scalloped edge. And I realise at this stage that I could actually have gutted that piece of Pool Party cardstock, but it didn't occur to me at the time, and not until I turn it over and look at the back and realise that I've wasted all that card. And I sort of give myself a little tut and think, oh, well, I could have gutted that, couldn't I? And saved that piece of card. So there we are. Now I'm kind of thinking, what shall I do next? Yes, it will fit really nicely onto that card front. So I'm going to go with that. And then I push it up to the top a little, and I think, well, I'll put a greeting at the bottom. Sometimes the greeting sentiment looks better at the bottom than it does at the top for some reason. So again, I'm just using my Tombow multi-purpose glue there to pop this second layer down onto my card. I like to make sure I get all the corners when I've done a scalloped edge or something, make sure they all go down nicely. So then I'm thinking about what kind of greeting I can put at the bottom. So I have a little sort through my stamp sets, and I decide to use the Balmy Blue again, and I've come up with Best Wishes from the Cottage Rose set. And I'm just stamping it onto a piece of basic white cardstock. And as I'm stamping, I'm thinking, I don't really want to cut this out just dead square. I quite like the thing that people are doing lately, which is to cut around the lettering when you've got a straight piece at the top and curved underneath. So I'm looking at the stamp, and I'm going to try and sort of follow the curves that are in the stamp itself. I won't be able to do it exactly, but it just gives me a little basic idea. So keeping the top straight, but just cutting a little bit of a border around the bottom of the lettering. So I just come in and do a little curve to start with, And if you use the method of moving the cardstock rather than the scissors, you will find this easier. I'm not going into every little nook and cranny. I'm just doing a very slight curve shape around some of the letters and just curving that off at the bottom there at the side. And then I take a look and think I've left a bit too much of a border on the side there, so I just trim that a tiny bit off. It's always better to go a little bit proud, and then you can get rid of more, or you can, if you cut too much off to start with, you can't stick it in. And now I'm deciding that I need to just trim a bit off the top as well, just to keep it all quite neat. And then I just think about where I'm going to put that, and I put it just off of the one side, and then I'm thinking it looks a bit lost, so I take the balmy blue Stampin' Write marker again and just go around the edge just to get a very, very thin line, and it just separates that sentiment from the white cardstock. It just makes it pop out. The white on white just looked a bit, it just got lost. So now that's just made it pop from the white background. Again, I'm just going to use Tombow with this. I want to keep this all quite flat, this particular card. I think it's because I'm thinking at this stage this would look quite nice in a little set of notelets, and therefore you'd make a box for it, etc. So you don't want to put too much dimension onto it. I'm still faffing about here, can't decide where it's going to go, and I plump for there. And then at this stage I'm thinking, oh, I was going to put a sentiment right at the bottom. I've changed all my ideas, so I need to cut this off, this card, because it's not going to look right. So I just cut the bottom off so that the border is the same as the one at the top, and that looks much nicer. So that's my first card finished. Then I bring in the next stamp, which is this sort of iris. And thinking back to when my mum used to grow them in the garden, mum's were purple and yellow. So I've taken the Daffodil Delight Stampin' Write marker, using that brush end again, and I'm only doing that very top petal, and I turn it over just to get a good look at where I'm going to colour this. And I'm just going round that bit. Now I go round and round, because if I go in flicking action like I used last time, I'm in danger of going over to the other petals, and I don't want to put yellow on those because I don't want it to interfere with the Highland Heather that I'm going to use in a moment. So here's the Highland Heather, and I just come in and colour those other petals. And remember, I said you do need to make sure you really cover this well. It's not like when you dip it onto an ink pad where the colour transfers immediately. This, I have to make sure I do go over every petal. And then I'm taking my Granny Apple Green again. I do like this colour. When you use the stamp pad, the sticker for it looks like a really luminous green. But it's not. It's a really nice, it's bright-ish, but not really bright as the sticker looks on the stamp pad. And then again, I'm doing the same as I did last time, bringing in the Old Olive, and I'm going to go around the outside of the stems again, and just bringing a little bit in with various lines here and there to blend it into the Granny Apple. And you'll see when they're finished that it does give a really nice effect. And when you look at foliage in the wild, you'll see that there are different greens in your leaves. If you look at the back of the leaf, it's always a very much lighter colour. Sometimes it's quite a silvery one. Now with this one, I've actually breathed on it rather than sprayed it with water. So I just bring it up to my mouth and sort of make a noise sound as I breathe out, and then I stamp it down. Now you will see another one there. Now on that one to the right, that was my trial, and I actually sprayed onto it, and it didn't work with this stamp set. It was too, the watercolor effect just didn't look right, didn't like it. Now I brought in the tags die there, the designer tags die set, and decided that that's what I'd make with this one. So I've stuck it down again and cut that one out with my die cut machine. And I've decided to then bring in another mat, and I'm looking at it now, wondering whether to use the Daffodil Delight or the Highland Heather to back this. So I'm just coming in with another frame from the Scalloped Contours dies, and I've decided on that one. That's going to fit. So in comes the Highland Heather cardstock. And off it goes to be cut. And I'm really pleased with that. I think that looks so good. And so I've just stuck that down again with my Tombow. Make sure it's glued all over, because I'm going to punch a hole out of the top for the tag. So you have to make sure that the glue goes in that area. I've decided on sending hugs from that stamp set, Splendid Thoughts. And onto my piece of basic white there. And then from the beautiful shapes dies, I've used that small oval to cut this out. I thought that would be fun, introducing a new shape so it's not all right angles. So I've cut that out, and I'm just going to pop that at the bottom. I really like the difference. Now I've stamped a little halo on this, a little bit of extra rubber on it, so I just use my sand eraser to get rid of that. It's really good. And again, pop some Tombow on the back, and that goes on there. Then I'm bringing out my little punch there, and I'm just punching a hole in the top, which is quite easy to do, just making sure I get that dead centrally, and punch that through. It goes through the two layers quite easily. And then I'm thinking about what can I put through the middle. And then I remember this old set that I got, it must be about 5 years ago, part of a Stampin' Up suite. I can't remember, Share What You Love or something like that it was called. And it's got this really thin white twine in it. It's just like heavy cotton, really. And I just doubled it up a couple of times, and then fed it through the little hole in the top, using my tweezers to pull it through. It's not very easy because that hole's very small, so it's a bit fiddly. But yeah, it happened. It went through, cut the edges off, and there's my little tag. So that's project number 2. And then I'm bringing in the third one, which is the Lovely Rose. And I've decided on the Flirty Flamingo there, and I'm going to use that as the colour, the most colour on the flower. So I'm able to just go straight across really quite quickly using the side of the brush end again. And then I just wanted it a bit darker in the middle. Some flowers are. So I've brought the Calypso Coral, which is very, very similar colour, but just a darker shape. And I'm just highlighting that middle part. And then I'm going to do the same as I did before with the foliage, and bring in the Granny Apple Green to cover all of the leaf and stem. And just being a bit careful where the actual stem meets the flower head, and giving that sort of brush action. And then in with the Old Olive, which is a slightly darker colour. And I'm going with that fine tip pen now. And I'm just drawing down the centre of each leaf very lightly. It's very easy to do. And then I'm just going to randomly make tiny little lines off of that central vein to look like the veins in the actual leaves. Now these won't come out as sharp lines because once I mist it again, the two colours will slightly blend in. But you'll get that definition, but it will look really nice, you'll see. So I put that mat underneath to stop my paper getting wet, and I just did one very fine mist right up above, about 6 inches above the stamp, so it just gets a tiny little kiss of that moisture, and it stamps perfectly. It was really nice. It was the best stamp I think I did that day. And then I'm coming out with the fabulous frames dies. Do you remember I did a video with these? Still got all those left over to use, and I was looking for one, and I thought that framed that beautifully. It reminded me of one of those old little cameo pictures they used to do back in the, I don't know, was it the 18th, 19th century? Very popular. And I just glued that down with my Tombow again, and I just thought that was the perfect frame for this little rose. So delicate. And you have to be quite careful when you use this, I want to call it mirror card. I can never remember what it's called from Stampin' Up. Just a very small amount of glue, because if it squirts out and goes onto the shiny surface, it doesn't look good. So I'm just using my large scissors to cut all the way round, using the frame as a guide, and I just cut the edge off. Okay, and there's my little miniature sort of, I just love that. So now I'm thinking, what am I going to do next? So I'm looking for another frame, I think. Having a look at what I've got. Yep, this is one I used from the Fabulous Frames, and I decide that that is going to look great. So now I'm thinking, if I put it straight onto my card, just with the white and gold, is that going to be enough? Will that be... I don't like that, it's too much white. So I'm looking for another colour, and I'm thinking about the Calypso Coral. So I bring that in and decide it's too heavy, it's too light, too dark. So I think, let's have a look at the Flirty Flamingo. So I bring that one in and test that out underneath the gold frame. Just bring, and this is how I play. I just check out things and think, does that look good? Do I like this? And I decide that, yep, that's going to be perfect, and that's exactly what I want. So I just cut my piece of Calypso Coral so that it's, sorry, no, it's Flirty Flamingo. And I cut it so it's about 1/8 of an inch bigger all the way around. I thought about using the Scallop Contours dies again, but I didn't want a fluted edge on this. I thought the gold frame inside had enough of a decorative edge. If I thought I put that on as well, it was just going to look too much. But then I decided that if I put a green layer in as well with that fluted edge, it would be okay. I tried the old olive, but I didn't like it. It was too heavy. And I thought Granny Apple Green would be good because I've used that in the foliage. However, I don't have any Granny Apple Green cardstock. So what I've done is I've just used the basic white cardstock to cut that out. And I'm gutting it this time. And I'm decided that since I don't have the Granny Apple Green, I'm going to use a blending brush and the ink pad and just take my blending brush and just go all around this, and I'm going to colour it up. And it doesn't take very long at all, 2 or 3 minutes. So just go in with that brush, and I can make myself a little bit of Granny Apple Green card. I'm using a bit of post-it note there upside down to hold on to the frame, and my fingers stick to the note and it stops them getting dirty and I don't get finger marks on my frame. So then I'm just going to pop that underneath my Flirty Flamingo layer on top of the white, and I'm just checking this out now. Do I like it? And yeah, I really think it finishes it all off. So now I'm just coming in with my Tombow all around the frames, being very careful on that one. Now I often take a clean tissue when I'm doing this, so that if any glue comes out, I get it on the tissue and it won't spoil my gold, and this sort of polishes up the gold at the same time. Then I come in with the lovely little oval and pop that in the centre. Again, use that tissue, serves two purposes, presses it down and also polishes up our gold. And then all the way around the outside of this one. And I'm just bringing my silicone mat here because I realise I could get glue on my grid paper if I put too much on. And just using that tissue to push it all down, secure it and polish it up. And I'm really happy with that. So I go on now and glue that. Now I'd already cut this particular card down, I think, at this stage. I must have done that off camera because I realised that if I was going to make a little set of notelets using these two designs, I might use a third when it comes to doing it. They would need to be the same size. So I cut that down to the, I think it's 5.5 high by 4.25 wide. So there's the two cards which are the same size, and there's my tag. And I'm really chuffed. So just bring it in. I've used the 4 different die sets. They all just worked so well together. They're all sized to intermingle, to be used together. And then just to remind you of the stamp sets I used, that was the sentiments from the Cottage Rose and the Splendid Thoughts. So I hope you've enjoyed my video today. Please do give me a thumbs up. If you look in the description box below, you'll see links to the digital downloadable catalogues and also a link to my store where you can purchase everything I've used today. Thanks for watching. Bye.